How does proportionality relate to the distinction principle in IHL? Imagine you're playing a game where you have to hit only certain targets without harming others. In international humanitarian law, this is similar to how armed forces must operate during conflict. Two key rules guide their actions. The first is the distinction principle, which says they must always tell the difference between civilians and fighters. The second is proportionality, which limits how much harm can be caused during an attack. These rules work together to protect innocent people while allowing military actions. The distinction principle is like a filter. It makes sure that only military targets are attacked. Civilians and their homes are off limits. This rule is strict and clear. It is written into international treaties like the Geneva Conventions. If a military unit targets civilians on purpose, that is a violation of this rule. The principle is absolute, meaning it must always be followed. Once a target is identified as a legitimate military objective under the distinction principle, then the rule of proportionality comes into play. Proportionality checks whether the expected harm to civilians is acceptable compared to the military advantage gained. For example, if destroying a military target might cause some civilian damage, the harm should not be excessive. If the civilian harm is too high compared to the military benefit, the attack is considered disproportionate and unlawful. These two principles are connected. First, the distinction principle helps decide who can be attacked. Then, proportionality limits how much damage can happen during that attack. Both are designed to reduce suffering and protect civilians during war. They are part of the laws that guide military decisions and actions. In real life, applying these rules can be tricky. Modern warfare often happens in cities where civilians and combatants are mixed together. Commanders must make quick decisions, balancing military needs with the duty to protect civilians. They must identify lawful targets and then assess if attacking them will cause too much civilian harm. If civilians are unintentionally harmed during an attack on a lawful target, it does not automatically break the law. But if the civilian harm is excessive compared to the military gain, that attack violates the rule of proportionality. If civilians are intentionally targeted, that breaks the distinction principle. Both types of violations can be considered war crimes. These rules influence how armies plan their operations, write rules of engagement, and hold soldiers accountable. Training and legal reviews are used to ensure these principles are followed. Violations can lead to investigations and legal action. In summary, the distinction principle and the rule of proportionality work together to protect civilians during armed conflict. The first makes sure only legitimate targets are attacked. The second makes sure the harm caused is not out of proportion to the military advantage. Both are essential parts of international humanitarian law, helping to limit suffering and keep war as humane as possible.